Thank you.
It's redundant.
Yeah, it's gonna be season, I mean, especially with them.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, they are.
Oh,
Yes, I haven't seen. Oh, okay.
I had seen all of them.
Okay.
I think but some of them are just maybe today. So,
Oh, if they just came out,
yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah. At least what I saw. Sunny. Love that.
All right, we're live. I'd like to call to order this Tuesday, April 30th, 2024 meeting of Ferrisburg Planning Commission. Could we have a roll call, Craig?
Chairman Rifle,
Present.
Commissioner Schulberg,
Present.
Commissioner Jones,
Present.
Commissioner Tuggle, Commissioner Weber.
Here.
Commissioner Carlson,
Here.
Commissioner Holly.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to excuse Commissioners Holly and Tuggle.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We excuse Commissioners Tuggle and Holly. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? We've excused them. Okay, agenda item number 3, consideration for approval, the April 30th, 2024 agenda. We have an agenda here. Are there any additions, changes anyone would like to make to this agenda?
Chairman, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
It's been moved and second. We accept the agenda for tonight's meeting as prepared. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, abstentions? Passed it. Okay, consideration for approval, the April 16th, 2024 meeting minutes. Craig has prepared a set of minutes for that meeting. And are there any additions or corrections that anyone would like to bring to our attention here? If not,
No.
Chair. Anyone want to accept them?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second. We accept the April 16th minutes as prepared. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? We've approved them. And I must say, good job, Craig. That's a big job. doing
Thank you.
that. Thank you. Okay, we're down to agenda item number 5, public comments. It's customary in Ferrisburg Planning Commission meetings to give members of the public the opportunity to share any thoughts that they would like to with us. If you have some comments you'd like to make, I would invite you to come to the podium, tell us your name and the city in which you reside, and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. And if you have questions or comments, please address them to me, and we may or may not answer your questions, but we certainly are listening. So I invite anyone who would like to come to the podium and share any comments with us. Sure, one up. You may, yes.
Hi, I'm Jeff Doty. I live in Ferrisburg on Smith Bayou. Still opposed to the cottage shores development. There have been some changes made to the original proposal. The change from 11 to 10 houses is less than adequate. Feels like far less than a good faith attempt to solve the issues. The project still has many problems, the main one to me being the waterfront setback. The proposed waterfront setback variance request has gone from 110 feet to 157 feet. Still well below the 282 feet required under the current guidelines. 4 houses closest to the water will still block a significant amount of the neighboring home sightlines. The 47-foot movement away from the water may sound like a lot, but it's really only 6 yards. Steps for me. For what it does to the neighbors' views and the can of worms it opens up, all of Ferrisburg's waterfront lots, it's not enough to pass this. At the last meeting, it was suggested that this project is just too big for the lot. I believe that's right. The simplest fix is to get rid of the last row of houses. That doesn't completely cure the setback issue, but would sure make it a lot more palatable. The developers seem to be unwilling to make this obvious change. That change makes the project unworkable financially. The margins are probably too tight to begin with. That is not the Planning Commission's problem, and the project should be protected. Please vote no on this.
Come on. Yeah.
All right, thank you for your time. My name's Ron Reddick. I'm an attorney for Scott Medina to the south of this project. I'm a little taller, I'll get it up. I prefer to hold it anyways. All right, so I've given you some documents, and I'll walk you through these, which provide more than ample reason why this project cannot be approved, as it's currently been submitted under the guidance of your master plan and under the plain terms of your zoning ordinance. The first thing at tab 1 I'll draw your attention to is excerpts from your master plan. And what you'll see at the first page is the provision that's highlighted that the developer has relied on, making the argument that this supports the development of a PUD on the property. But it does not. You'll see that provision makes reference to the remaining large acreage parcels that are planned for PUD. So you have to consult with other provisions of the master plan to see what it's talking about. And you'll see that on the next page, it talks about those properties are the inventory of larger parcels, being 3 acres or more, that are designated for PUD use. And it goes on to describe those and then map them out on page 19 of the master plan. So you'll see the properties, 3 acres or more, that were planned for PUD use, and conspicuously absent from that map is this particular property, because as we know, it is not 3 acres, and it's not undeveloped. It already has a reasonable new use as zoned. So on that point, given that the master plan talks about 3-acre parcels, there should be no surprise that in your zoning ordinance, a PUD chapter generally requires 3-acre parcels in order to do a PUD. It does provide for exceptions, and that's the language I have at tab 2. And you'll see that in order to grant a waiver from the 3-acre requirement, all of the criteria under that provision have to be satisfied. Not 1 of them, not 2 of them, not 3 of them, all 4 of them. And in particular, one thing that has to be satisfied is the one that says the reduction in area is not proposed due solely to the inability of the applicant to meet the normal requirements of the zoning district in which the PUD is proposed. And here, I submit to you, you have a rare circumstance where the applicant has admitted they do not satisfy that standard. And what I'm referring to is at tab 3, and you'll see this was submitted by the developer, where he explains that the waterfront setback averaging waiver is required because without this variance, it's not a variance, it's a waiver, this project is dead in the water. So you have the applicant admitting to you that the only reason he's seeking a PUD is to get a waiver from that requirement. And criteria 4 tells you you cannot grant a PUD waiver from the 3-acre requirement for that reason. So a PUD shouldn't be allowed at all. Now, that said, looking at the waterfront setback averaging anyways, that's what's at page 4 of my packet. And I understand from prior submissions from the applicant that they've presented this as a proposal that was intended to apply only to Lake Michigan properties. Well, that's just dead wrong. If you look at the plain language of the provision, it talks about it applies to all lots on Lake Michigan, Spring Lake, which includes this property, the Grand River, or any other body of water. So it expressly does apply to this property. And then at tab 5, what you have there, and I understand the Breedesides submitted this already, but you have one of the properties that served as the genesis for this waterfront setback rule, this property at 17373 North Shore Estates. And the important point I want to make here, this is the terrible thing that you were trying to get rid of with this waterfront setback averaging. That's specifically stated in the memos that were leading up to the adoption of this provision. And what you had at this property was a 22-degree impact on the sight line of the affected property. So compare that to what the developer is proposing here, even under his reduced plan, which is at page 6, it is still a 29-degree impact on the Breedesides viewshed. So what you have here is an even worse impact than specifically what you were trying to prevent when you adopted waterfront setback averaging. So this is not so much a waiver that's being asked for. This is asking you to take a Mack truck and run it through this provision and back up to make sure it's dead. This is not a waiver. This is ignoring your zoning ordinance, is what's being asked for. And I want to point out, the ability to grant waivers under the zoning ordinance, you'll look at tab 7. It says the only circumstances in which waivers are to be granted is if it is to ensure proper and harmonious building relationships or protect and preserve natural features. The waiver they're seeking clearly does not do either of those things. It creates more conflict with adjacent neighbors, and it does not protect or preserve any resources. It consumes more of the resources with more buildings. And finally, I want to bring you to tab 8. I understand it was said at the last meeting, or there were some comments to the effect, well, isn't this really just the same as the Gables or Vites Landing? It is nothing like either of those two projects, and I've pointed that out with the aerial photos here. You'll see the first one of the Gables, you'll see there was 0 waterfront setback impact caused by that development. The first one is looking from the southeast. You'll see that development had 0 impact on the neighbor's sightline, and same thing from the other direction, 0 impact on the neighbor's sightline. And it's kind of ridiculous to make that claim with respect to Vites Landing, because you'll see that development is entirely on its own peninsula. So it was impossible for it to have any impact on sightline views from neighboring properties. So there is just more than ample reason here to reject this property as being proposed. Even though I don't think it qualifies for a PUD, I think what you ought to ask for to protect your community and stay with fidelity to your ordinances and master plans is something similar to what was just suggested. What should be done is the middle row of houses, which is now 2, ought to be removed, and the front row of houses, which is 4, ought to be moved back 55 feet. That's a reasonable compromise, and what it does is create no more than a 5-degree impact on the view shed from the Breedenston's property. That's not perfect for them, but it's a reasonable compromise, and it represents what a waiver is meant for. It is not meant to completely gut the zoning ordinance and the waterfront setback averaging requirement. It's meant to allow reasonable compromise. So 5 degrees would do that, where 55 feet back would only create that 5-degree impact. And moreover, at 8 units, then you're consistent with your master plan recommendation, which says for this property, there should be no greater density than 3 units per acre. If you take it down to 8 units, it's then almost right at just below 3 units per acre. So you get the best of both worlds. You maintain the integrity of your waterfront setback averaging, and you get a density that's consistent with your master plan recommendation. So although we don't think this ought to be approved at all, that's at least a reasonable compromise, and at best, we think that's what you are. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask one question?
Yes.
Would you mind repeating, you said the middle row would be removed and 55 foot back, which row?
Yeah, if you remove the middle rows of houses, which is now just 2 under the existing plan, and then you took the front row of 4 and moved those back 55 feet, all of them, so they're all consistently moved back 55 feet, that's where you end up with about a 5-degree or less impact on the Breedenstein's view shed to the water.
I think the front row he's referring to as the waterfront row.
Yeah, I should make that clear.
Yeah, that wasn't clear.
Not the
Yeah,
street
yeah.
side. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Sure, come on up.
Do that. I don't really think.
And your name is?
Discuss very much.
Ma'am, tell us who
I'm
you
sorry,
are.
I'm Willetta Blake. Okay. I am very concerned that, from my perspective, all 12 of the boat docks in the Cottage Shores proposal will be directly in front of my home, with the docks being close to the center of the bayou. If this is approved, when I look out my window and walk in my yard, all I will see is possibly 12 large boats lined up side by side in the middle of the bayou facing my home. What happened to the docks hugging the shoreline? That's what the information that was passed out to the neighbors said. There is only one section of dock hugging the shoreline, and it is a walkway. A section of dock hugging the shore, and that's a walkway. The rest extends out into the water. How much of the bayou will this docking system take? It is not a series of docks along the shoreline. I would like to speak for the part of the bayou where I and many neighbors live. It is peaceful and quiet. In the past 30 years that my husband and I have lived there, when we looked out our windows or sat in our yard, we've seen that peaceful and tranquil place. I don't even like thinking of never being able to see that place again. You want to take from your adjacent neighbors and myself the one thing that makes our properties valuable, a beautiful place to live. Our views of the water and the bayou. You know, I get it with the proposal. The water is a place for boats and people and fun and laughter and noise. There are places like that everywhere near West Michigan. But sometimes the water is a place for peace and quiet and tranquility. And there is a place for that too. Sometimes we just need to leave those places alone.
Hey, my name's Dave Cook. I live in the city of Ferrisburg. I once read a book that claimed that the zoning going on in the country is making people homeless and poor. I would say that's true for everyone except for lawyers. And I've heard a lot of opposition tonight. And one of my questions is, what is it? Is the opposition a technical requirement in the zoning ordinance? Is it the marina that people think is going to be built on the water? Is it the nostalgia of looking out at the lake? What is it? People are either for or against it. Some people say, you know, I'd be willing to negotiate. David Brockmeyer came to this body 8 months ago and brought his neighbors with him. And after the meeting was over, he asked them if they had any comments or concerns. I don't think anyone was willing at that time to involve an attorney or to approach the Brockmeyers and say, this is what we're thinking of, can you work with us? I have personally reviewed the changes they have made, and I think they're great. They did a great quick turnaround. I think they addressed a lot of the concerns we heard during the public comment. And I would tell you that whoever wrote this ordinance and the changes to it, they meant it to be up to your interpretation as appointed officials. So I would urge you to vote yes on the proposal. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
Hi, my name's Dr. Jennifer Jermalowitz Jones, and I'm a resident in Spring Lake Township. And I guess I'm not here to take sides, but I am here to raise some awareness. Spring Lake is not in the greatest health, and it's been like that for a long time. I've lived here since 2001, and I've seen the lake deteriorate. And one of my biggest concerns is that Smith's Bayou is very delicate. I'm not sure that it can basically accumulate any more boat traffic without erosion. I'm worried about that on the stream bank because there's a lot of bank erosion going on in the bayou. And the carrying capacity with extra boats. If you consider the bayou is about a 49-acre area up to the bridge there, the Smiths Bayou Bridge, that's not a big area, and there's a lot of boats already in there. So I think if you add more boats, obviously that's going to create other issues. But I think that we're at a critical point where we need to start taking a broader look for all the bayous and the entire lake about how development is occurring. We need to make sure that we're not getting the lake over a tipping point. I know that right now there's an alum treatment in play, and that's very expensive, and that's a Band-Aid. That's a Band-Aid. It's not even really affecting the bayous or improving the bayous. So I'm just here to maybe bring some awareness to the council and to the Planning Commission on the need to look at those factors in these kind of decisions. Thanks.
Would anyone else like to share anything with us?
Nicole Arabelle, 16814 Virginia. I just wanted to state again that it doesn't meet.
Gentleman in the back, way in the back, started to come up here. Yeah.
Tim Scarpino, 17761 Bayberry, in the city of Ferrisburg. Just a couple of comments, and I'll keep my remarks within the 3-minute time period. I was one that made comments regarding the Gables and Bites Landing at the last meeting that unfortunately you weren't at, I don't believe anyways. The point I was trying to make with those wasn't necessarily how they impacted the neighbors in terms of sight lines. The point I was trying to make was that they were innovative developments brought to the city that are nice neighborhoods, quiet neighborhoods, safe neighborhoods, and really don't impact the city in a very negative way. Both of them. Outstanding neighborhoods. And that is sort of the benefit of an association, a group of homeowners coming together under a common situation where they work hard to keep their properties nice. And that was the point that I was making about the Gables, as well as Bites Landing. With regard to Spring Lake Health, again, we touched on that at the last meeting. The issues impacting Spring Lake are not going to be impacted to any great degree by what happens with development along the lake shore and Smith's Bayou. We need to start talking to people in Muskegon County if we really want to deal with what's going on with the water quality in Spring Lake, with regards to phosphorus fertilizers that are used all over the place that leach into the lake. So, you know, Spring Lake is never going to be Higgins Lake. It's never going to be one of the beautiful up north lakes with beautiful sand and clear water. That's not the nature of the body of water that it is. And finally, with regards to views and sight lines, I believe at the last meeting we heard from the Johnson family who has property across the street from the Brockmeyers. Did you not hear them say that at some point they're going to be developing that property? I share a nearly 250-foot border with the Johnsons' property, their eastern border, my western border. And right now, nothing but pine trees, some of them dead, oak trees, maples, and whatnot. Very peaceful where I live. I suspect at some point there's going to be a bunch of houses there. And unfortunately, that's the way that goes. They're entitled to develop their property the way that they see fit. And there is something to be said for private property rights. I am sorry that folks are not as supportive of this as I believe they should be. I think from a city standpoint, it's an ideal development and helps contribute to our economic vitality, which we all probably can agree is important to the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Gentleman, there was a gentleman down here, I thought, who getting up. Nope. Okay, come on up. Sorry.
Hillary O'Toole, 16885 Lake Road, Spring Lake, City of Ferrisburg. I wasn't at the last meeting, but I heard a lot about it. And my concern is really pretty basic. If the City of Ferrisburg has the laws on the books or the ordinance on the books that need to be followed, that everyone within the city needs to follow, they were there for a reason. So my understanding is there's 4 or 5 of those ordinances which cannot be met with this development. I don't know if from 11 to 10 that reduces any of that, or from 11 to 8 that reduces any of that. But if those are on the books as a law or ordinance, then those should be followed. Every one of them shouldn't be a way to get around them. Otherwise, what's next? You know, it'll be a free-for-all. Bring in the house trailers, do whatever anybody wants, because every ordinance can be overturned or changed. So if the ordinance are on the books, I think they should be the Bible to be followed. If they need to be changed, then that should probably be a whole different avenue of how that gets done, voted on by the people that a certain ordinance wants to be changed, no longer valid, whatever the reason. But if they're there right now for everybody to follow. And that's what I think should be the guidelines, which take a lot of emotion out of this. They're there, they're not being followed by this development, then the development needs to change to meet those guidelines, not the other way around. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to share anything with us? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to close the public comments at 7:31. And let's move forward now to agenda item number 6. Discussion and to take action, if appropriate, to remove from the table a request by David Brockmeyer for a proposed planned unit development plan for 11 residential units on parcels numbers 70, 03, 09, 495, 006, and 70, 03, 09, 495, 007, commonly known as 17753 168th Avenue and 17771 168th Avenue.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I move that we remove the item number 6 from the table.
is there a second? Do we bring it up so we can talk about it? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We remove it from the table so that we can discuss it and act on it. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we've removed it from the table. So we've done that. And we're now going to move to agenda item number 7, which is discussion and to take action, if appropriate, to recommend to City Council to approve or not approve this request. So we've removed it from the table. It's active. We can discuss it, and let's proceed to do that. And last time, just as preliminary comments here, last time we really didn't get to discuss very much about the proposal. We spent most of the night hearing issues and thoughts from our fellow citizens. We really didn't get to go through Mr. Callan's comments, that he's the engineer for them, so we probably ought to do that. And Mr. Brockmeyer's here, and I think he probably wants to have dialogue with us. He's heard what was said last week, or 2 weeks ago, and I think he got a sense that probably if we were to vote 2 weeks ago on it, it wouldn't have been approved. I don't know that. I didn't pull anyone. He went back and made some changes. And he certainly improved a few things. For example, the road no longer goes to 11 units, it goes to 10, which is now in compliance. But there are other issues. So I think we need to have discussion, and I'd like to hear what my fellow commissioners have to say. And let's engage Mr. Brockmeyer back and forth here. Colleagues.
Want me to go first again?
Sure, Roger.
8 months ago, I think it was, when Mr. Brockmeyer first brought this before this body as an idea, he threw it out there and wanted feedback on it. And I think I was the only one that evening that said my comment, and I'll repeat myself because I'm on the record. I said, I think you're trying to get 10 pounds of sugar in a 5-pound bag. And I make sure I said sugar. And that's where I still stand on that. I'll stand with that comment. To me, and I'll put it right out there, my magic number is 8. And I've got an idea how to get there. I had some ideas how to get down to 9, which I shared. But I'll share with you right now how you get to 8. First of all, you leave the 4 units in front, the front rows, that means the lakeside. Take out 2 in the street side. Angle the other 4 45 degrees so that you're cutting down your entrance and you're improving their view of the lake itself, because right now it's all blocked off. That moves everything back so you gain a few degrees on sight lines, And it gets your the density down to 2.7 per acre, which is not bad, and well within the compliance. Because I want to read you something. This, the zoning RG1 along here is everything's aligned. It started out to be arbitrary. We were in the city until 1963, and there were plats all over the place. And this particular property was platted out differently, the number of different lots on it. But over time they got changed, and then we started looking at the cottage district as separate because it was quite unique. And I remember John there with the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals. We're getting all kinds of requests for variances because those cottages, first of all, don't have a side yard setback. They're too close to the water. And as a matter of fact, there's one over on Lake whose the corner of the house is less than 12 inches from the property line. Now, we granted and said it's unique. I'm sorry, my switch doesn't work. No. I got a cheap phone. I'm sorry about that. So we carved out what's now known as, used to be the Lakeside District, and at that time in our master plan, I dug it out. My wife says I don't throw anything away, and she's right, from 2007. And it states in there that no more than 8 units per acre in the Lake Cottage District. Well, that's pretty hefty, I would say, down there. So that's what's allowed there. Then you go, Carlson Street seems to be the boundary. So why was Carlson picked? Why was Cecilia picked? Why was Virginia picked? Why was Lakeview picked? Why was Royal? Why was Lake? Where did all these, why wasn't Cove picked down there too? Why was Roosevelt picked? I don't know, but back then everybody wants to be on the water, and all those properties are too. There's only one section of the bayou and lake and Spring Lake within the city limits of Ferrisburgh that is not developed, and that happens to be the property north of Carlson. Now, there is reasonable, in my opinion, there too. That is, I'm interested in things that are a little bit unique to Ferrisburgh and not cookie cutter as so much. Everybody else is close to the water. It wants to be close to the water. We live here because we're close to the water. Some people want to be on the water. So the fact that your neighbors built way away from the water originally, is that a penalty that nobody can come in there and get closer because it'll knock your view out? Well, I'm not sure that's the way the ordinance was designed. Maybe we have to change it. But right now, you can block somebody's view to a point, but there is that point. So you don't own the view. We know that, but that's beside the point. It's the angle of view. My proposal would take it back a few degrees, so we're closer to that compliance, where you have a project which otherwise complies with everything on the ordinances, but remember we're working within a PUD. Within a PUD, you're able to do a lot of things that you wouldn't normally be able to do under current zoning. Doesn't mean you have a free rein, but that's what a PUD is for. So remember that. Regarding the docks, they don't stick out 75 feet into the middle of the bayou. I have an overhead view of them, and they're out less than the ones across the street, across the bayou on Cove, for example. But anyway, some of these stories that get out there. So I've been wanting to make this project go because it's unique. I also wanted to make it go so it fits better in the neighborhood. And you end up having changes, gradual changes, so you're not getting into apartment buildings and high rise. If you propose 11 units and you want to put an 11-story building in there, is that allowed? No. I give you I can give you better setback and sidelines? No. So there's some things that are not allowed, and we're trying to comply with that. So I'm sorry it took so long, but I've been thinking about this for the last several weeks, and that's what I have.
Thank you, Roger. You're always very thoughtful about these things. We appreciate that. We benefit from your wisdom. Colleagues?
Yeah, Roger, so how many units would you, in your proposed plan, narrow it down to?
My magic number is 8.
8, and then did you say 9 potentially?
No,
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 8.
8. And that's 4, 2, and 2.
Okay.
And get creative. And I suggested before the rotate 90 degrees, which he did on 2 of these, and which got us some more setback and got us a better angle for vision. And if you do the same thing, take 2 out, and you can angle them a little bit more, 45 degrees, and it makes a better, in my opinion, better looking development. It's all not just 90 degrees, 180 degrees. It's a little jazz it up. Just an idea.
Gina, you have thoughts?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts.
Okay.
Some of them better kept in my head, probably. I think there's been progress because a lot of misconceptions have been eradicated. I have some questions about flooding, for instance. I've heard various tales about flooding and the potential for flooding here. And I also have questions about the docks. Now, those are approved by State Eagle, right, agency.
Correct.
So what factors are taken into consideration when they approve those docks? Is it have anything to do with erosion, or what are their factors for approval? So we don't know the flooding potential either, right?
Correct.
Well,
I think the engineers out there got it. Yeah.
oh, yeah.
Yes. Sure.
So, the docks won't have any. So they're either floating or they're going to be. Catchphrases. The buildings are significantly away from the floodplain. So much more now than they were before. That's not going to impact. So regarding flooding, we're not filling in the floodplain. We're not constructing in the docks are irrelevant as pertaining to flooding. So I don't know.
I just meant flooding in general. I mean, I've lived through it. It's not fun. So
Well,
I just wanna-
no. I mean, there's a 100-year floodplain that's illustrated on the plan, and frankly, the flooding didn't get up to that during the last high water. But we're significantly far removed from that, and even then, be 3.5 to 4 feet to our finished floor above that 100-year floodplain, which is about 4 feet above ordinary high right now. Moving it back, we're going to be even higher.
Thank you. I guess my other thought is the density issue seems to be really paramount here. And when I saw that we had an attorney here, I was like, well, my son's an attorney. I know how you guys work. So I really respect that. And I'm wondering now what kind of feedback David would have to that proposal that was just given to us about the middle row being removed, et cetera.
So we did play with this a lot in that before we had to submit. We tried 8 in 2 rows. What that does, because then we've got to take the fire lane between the buildings. still want some. So the road gets widened, get pushed out, and so then, the way we got it now, the neighbors to the south will have a wonderful view shed, 45 feet wide or more, directly north. If we put 4 houses in that row, then really, I mean, we have to push the houses out to get them to fit, and then, and then they just even get closer. We looked at 9, but then we've got 3 and 3, but the 3 have to be the long way instead of the short way. We did reduce the buildings to 50 foot depth as opposed to the 60 that we had before. So, so we reduced the building sizes. We tried 3 in the middle, but they would have to be long, and then that again just pushes the 3rd row back even further again. So actually, 10 with the configuration that we have has less impact on the view shed. 9, we had tried to go that route, and 8 just kind of pushes things up, but not significantly much the benefit to Mr. Brockmeyer or to the neighbor. So because its buildings are right house, whereas now there's quite a bit of open space, air volume, next to their house as you look. We thought, given the increase or decrease of 12% to the angle of view shed on the north and slightly more to the south, we thought this was the best compromise that gave the best scenario for what the discussion was at the last.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yeah. I have a question for Bruce, if I could.
Sure.
And that is, we're talking about the sight lines and reducing the number of units potentially. Talk to me about groundwater and the amount of fill that's going to be brought in and the retaining walls.
So we've done a lot of cross sections on the thing and alignments, profiles. Everything on the south, we're matching grade. Everything even up to the middle of the road, the primary drive, we're essentially matching grade. As you get to the north, it kind of dives down a little bit. We've got a maximum 3 foot retaining wall. That's and that's just so that we can get sewer to go the right way, make sure we have enough cover over the sand. Of course, now it's going to be less impact since we're moving over, up a little bit. So we're not going to have that fill further to the west lake, but we are going to have just a little bit between the first row and the second row, just on the but it's 2 to 3, and then as you go north or closer to the road, it just left.
So you're saying no fill on the south side?
We're matching grade essentially, yeah.
And on the north side?
On that, we got 2 to 3 0 to make that bend around where the weird little property is.
You're talking about the
little zigzag,
yes.
Yeah, it gets up to 3 feet there, and that works its way.
Because if I look at I've certainly walked all the properties around there, and it seems like along the property line, on north of the property line, seems like there's quite a low area there. And you're going to be potentially accentuating the water flow across the neighbor's property. That's a question.
We are taking ours all internal to ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah. And everything else just drains right down. There's a natural drainage course, swale, low area right along that shared property.
That's on the development piece of property.
On the north property.
Okay.
So we're not contributing to that. Actually, we're putting our drainage structures closer to the north so that we can forward grade as we go to them. we're capturing all of our rain, runoff and then directing it internal to the, so we're not contributing.
A follow-up to Rich's question, on your notes, it says a modular retaining wall with a 4-foot opaque screening fence. Is that in
That's a
addition?
fence. That's a fence above it.
Above it? Above the berm?
There is no berm.
The
It's
re-
just the wall.
But the wall, how's the wall?
The wall is 2 row to 3 row feet.
Oh, okay. So you're not getting over 6?
No, we just got a 3-foot wall, and then we're gonna have a meaning, like a dog-eared or just like you would along your property.
Okay, to keep within 6 feet.
We can keep as
Yeah,
well allow.
no, 6 feet is
Yeah, we don't need to go that high.
Okay.
I mean, the intent is,
just to clarify.
yeah, just the headlights from.
With my glasses on, I can read your notes.
I think we had 6 feet on the east side because we don't have any going, or south side. But now since with side entry garages on
Anyone else want to make comments?
I will say that we were able to then, with this reconfiguration, meet the side yard setbacks item, 20 feet minimum between buildings. We're 60 feet for the most between buildings front and back, except where the outside ones on the third row were 45. But time we've opened up for area. The ones in the middle are 60 plus feet. But and we've open space exceeding 30%.
Questions for?
If not, I am.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I was just gonna, I think, are we all set with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, this isn't directed just at you, but,
Okay.
I mean, from the last meeting, I see there were 3 pressing issues. We needed a reduction in units, an increase in waterfront setback, and an increase in sightlines. At least that was my take on it for myself. And I do want to point out that the team has addressed all 3 of those. I guess the question is just, has it been reasonable compromise? I do kind of agree with Roger that I do feel like it's a, what is it, 10-pound bag and a 5-pound bag? Yes. So I don't know. I mean, I know that our city planner has offered a lot of suggestions. He sent an email to the team, and I really liked he had an idea of eliminating units 8 and 11, and then turning potentially 9 and 10. So that would make 9 units. I know you've discussed sight lines. I think in our email it said they would or better. But I think just eliminating even another unit would make more green space, less density per acre. I think it would go from 3.5 units per acre to 3.14 units per acre. There'd just be fewer docks, less boat traffic. I do feel like as a commissioner, we do need to listen to our citizens, and I have to kind of take individual Jordan and listen to what Commissioner Jordan should do. And we do hear you, the residents, and it's hard to see past that. So I am in support of this project. I want to see this project go through. I know I'm not gonna make every single person in this room happy. That's what we knew that going into this job. But I don't know if this 10 units is the right fit for me right now. And that's my 2 cents. We can.
Absolutely.
First of all, I want to correct a couple of, and that is that the docks will not go up. The docks are proposed to be about as far out as my dock is right now, which is about 70. So that's one item. Number two, I think everybody is an expert about everything. And there's the reality of the situation, not something else. So I can either just save us a bunch of time, because at 8 units, the risk to me of the equity I currently have in my own property, it's worth a good amount of money. That's what I'm bringing to the table. That's my investment in. And yeah, if we got to go to 8 units, it gets too skinny and too risky. No, I have no idea what the construction cost is really going to be a year from now. That's the reality. I really wish that our political climate in this town was a little bit different, because I think it really influenced your ability to speak openly to me as a resident, not just an applicant, but as a resident, to say to me, hey, we got a problem with this. Because Roger is the only person who said anything to me about it, which includes, it was all about density. It wasn't about sightlines. I identified sightlines, knowing that this might be, I said this halfway through the last meeting. I brought these issues up with you and said, hey, I just need to know if this is like a no-go or not. And here we are 8 months later, after I spent tens of thousands of dollars, and now we're at the point where that's all of a sudden an issue. I really wish you had said something. Why? So, and I know there's reasons why you keep cards close to the vest. My intention was never to do any harm to my neighbor. My intention was to do something that's good for my family and what we wanted to do with our own property. And it's our right to do that. Waterfront setback ordinance is an abomination. And you're going to find people that are going to be upset about this when they go to sell their properties, including my next door neighbor, Norm. Because somebody's going to want to do something with that property that's different than what it currently is, which could just include moving closer to the water. And he's not going to be allowed to do that. So thankful for your service, but I really wish you had said that back then. So 8 is out. We did everything we possibly could to work with 9. 9, you end up exactly where you suggested, Rob. Said take out the 2 end units, hold the other 90 degrees, get to 9. We are exactly where you proposed in terms of sightlines. So we thought this is a great resolution if we can get to this point where we have, an improved sightline. We're moving anywhere from 40 to 60 feet further back. It's unfortunate the Bridenstine's property is 10 feet from their lot line. Makes their visibility limited. And I would go to 8. I'd have no problem going to 8 if it didn't jeopardize my entire family's future, because that's what's at stake. So 8's out. So if you guys want to just table it, I'm not going to 8. 9's out. Doesn't make any sense to go to 8. It just doesn't. We tried every combination of properties we could possibly think of. And
You're talking sightlines for 9. You're saying that the sightlines are similar for 8 units versus 9 units?
No, for 9 and 10 are exactly the same. We are as close at, sightlines are exactly the same, best proposal we could come up for 9 as they are with 10. I can't think of anything else in terms of clarifying or correcting misinformation that's still out. That is, that's just where this is. You guys can just.
Roger?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make excuses for this body because I was gone for 3 months during the winter and tried to keep up with everything that's going on. But let me explain a few things. This planning commission is also going through an update of the master plan that involves a lot of extra time on the parts of the people at this dais right now. So we got that on our plate. We also, most of you don't know, every single one of us got FOIA'd this last winter. We had to supply every single email that we ever had that had anybody's name on the address or copy line. And we had to dig all those out and do it. Now, why, I don't know. Reading my emails is not very salacious, let me tell you. But anyway, and we're not sure who that was directed at, but all 7 of us got it. So just to let you know where we stand, we've tried, David. I know we can't say too much because we're under this gun. And I tried to telegraph something, but I'm one person. And I respect everybody on this commission. I've been on the planning commission for over 22 years, 23 years. This is by far the best commission I've ever been on. And I'll say that publicly. They all care. They've gone through Citizen Planner. So we're serious about what we do. And I guess I get taken aback a little bit sometimes about we're not doing our job. This is what we're supposed to do.
Okay, I haven't shared any of my thoughts with you, and so I've been thinking a lot about this, and I am going to share some thoughts with you. And I think what we need to do is, I think what David essentially was saying here, if there's a number of units, I mean, there are a lot of little issues that need to be taken care of, fence height, ground, the city sewers and so forth. Little things would have to be taken care of if we were going to go forward. A lot of I's to dot and T's to cross. But I think the real issue is how many units are we willing to allow? And as I thought about it, there really are 3 issues that come to my mind that are non-starters, really, in a way. One is the sightline issue. Now, Mr. Brockmeyer's revised plan has improved sightline issues for neighbors, and that's good. We're going in the right direction. But still, not enough to satisfy neighbors. Not that neighbors have to always be satisfied, but I think when you own waterfront property, you don't own that view, but here in Ferrisburg, we have an ordinance about what you can do. And though it may have been developed originally relative to lakefront property, it applies equally on the bayou. And I think it's a good one. We could differ on our opinion about that, but I think it's a good one. So that would be a non-starter for me. The sight lines have to be better to make it work. If I were required to vote on this tonight, the proposal in front of us, I would vote no on it. Second issue is one of intensity of use in the bayou, in the north area there. And there's a section in our ordinance about when we do something here with a land use plan, with a PUD and a site plan review, there's a concern about what does it do? Is it in conformity with the neighborhood, or does it stand out? And our consultant had created a map here that was useful, the one that had the colors on it. This proposal was going to have 3.85 units, dwellings per acre. And in RG1, which is what this property area is zoned, the plan, the land use plan calls for no more than 3. And David had down here stuff that's in the overlay district that had higher numbers. But I think putting 11 units initially and still 10 units here on that property is just too intense for that property. And I think it has issues for the whole north end of the bayou. There'll just be more activity. People who bought houses up there bought them because they liked what they got there, which is reasonable peace and quiet. Not that this is going to be a while, because David has shared that they would build into the condo rules. You can't have rentals, and that would be very good and required. But I just think the intensity there is just out of proportion to what's in that northern part of the bayou. It's just too intense. And third reason, following up on that, is if we were to approve what's on the table right now, I think it would only be a matter of time before we'd see more people in that area up there coming and saying that I'm going to go with my neighbors on my left and my right, and we're going to join a couple properties, and we're going to do something like Mr. Brockmeyer is proposing here. And if we approve this as it is right now, we'd be in a bind. If we didn't like that, we wouldn't be able to back out of it. Now, I'm going to say this. When I looked at the plans that were sent, we had these big sheets here. As I looked at it, and I saw this one here, this here, and you had very nicely had little sight lines shown in there, which were very helpful if they're correct. And I have no idea if they are, but I bet they are. I looked at that and I said, you know, and I'm going to say this, I'm an economist. And even after I earned my PhD, my mother said, John, are you sure you don't want to go back to law school? That was my backup career, and become an attorney. And I said, no, Mom, I'm happy to be an economist. My thoughts about how this possibly could be worked, because I'm not opposed to development. In fact, a year and a half ago, I chaired an economic development task force for the city of Ferrysburg for a year and a half. So I'm in favor of development. It just has to be the right kind of development. And so I looked at that and I said, you know, if you took out those two middle units, the second row, and pushed the lakefront units further toward the street, which I think is what the attorney was suggesting, you would certainly do a lot better for the neighbors. So I don't know if Mr. Reddick, if you came up with that, or if your neighbors, neighbors to the north there suggested that as a backup. I'm not sure what that would improve the sightlines, is what I'm saying. So where I'm coming from is, and also I would say that if you took out those two middle units, you'd now be down to 8, which is what Roger's number was. And if you divide that by the amount of acreage, you'll be under the 3 units per acre that the land use plan says you ought to have in that area. But I also understand Mr. Brockmeyer's concern about financially, and I got that. And I would say, Mr. Brockmeyer, when I did visit your property last summer, and you had things all nicely staked out and so forth, and I walked around there and looked, I never said I'm cool with what the sightlines are going to be there. Well, I didn't say it was a non-starter, but I wasn't happy with it. Sure. Yeah. Now, I will say this. I'm a no vote on this, but there are 5 people up here. If there are 3 people up here who would go forward with what's here right now, it'll still go. I'll just be voting no, so.
we still, we could only recommend the city council. They're the last
Yeah.
people to, they're the ones that have to pass on it. So regardless of what our opinion is, it's got to go through one more body.
That's a correct point. We make a recommendation to city council. Our position is not final.
And I'm still optimistic to support a 9-unit plan, just putting that out there, but I don't know if that's something that you're interested in. Yeah, but there are other issues at play too. The green, I mean, we got so many emails. There are other issues at play. Sightline, they are important, but they're not everything. And at the end of the day, I think you want as much support for this project as you can. And I think by eliminating down to 9, you would potentially gain more support. And that's what I want for you. Like, I don't want to kibosh this. I want to get creative, but there needs to be a reasonable compromise. And yeah, I don't know if 10 is.
I'm sorry, what?
That's true.
Well, what's your comment?
We'll hold off. She was saying that basically she has canvassed around the bayou and talked to. Obviously, there's a number of people here and other people around the neighborhood and people who don't live on the bayou that are against this. But those people don't, you know, the people who are unopposed don't. I'm sure you well know. I'm going to make a couple of clarifications. I think you were kind of going here with by any calculation, whether you're using Dave's calculation or our calculation, over a third of this parcel with the proposal we conform with almost every other setback, except for 2 of the houses. Setbacks are by 7.5 feet. Nothing more? Okay, we're even better than that. All right, so good thing we pay him so much money. Yeah. So I think we're far more conforming. I really did try to take as much as I could off, move it back. As we played with this thing all day for trying to figure it out. And not go to 8. Not something I wanted. If we could get to 9, but I think our solution that we have in front of you, so the issue was sightlines, units per acre, and now it's kind of, well, now there's too many houses. Again, beat a dead horse, but there's a lot of, we'll just make a comment on flooding because that keeps coming up too. Yeah, it flooded 2 years ago, where it was. There is standing water when it rains. That's true for everybody in that neighborhood. So but we are well outside the flood. We are well above the flood. We are not building anything in the floodplain. We are not building anything in the wetlands there. Be clear so everybody knows that. That's not our proposal at all. The docks that are directly north of me and directly next to you, Mrs. Lester, that are next to you are 100 feet out into the bayou, constricting the bayou more than any other docks on the entire bayou, including those, except for maybe right by the bridge. The distances between those areas are significantly shorter. There's almost 550 feet from our south lot line across the bayou. There's from our north lot line, which is the Beebe's lot line, directly across to Mrs. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing. To your yard is 340 feet. It's all no wake, very little boat traffic back there. It's all snow. It's all very slow. The erosion concerns are legitimate if we were in, I feel, in the main body of the lake, but not back here in the bayou. It's all just slow putt. I like to look at. So, I think the idea that we're going to be stretching out in the middle of the bayou again is crazy. And there's not we're not going to be concerned about flooding because so far we're 233 feet off of the waterfront on one side on the side. We're 157 feet off the waterfront on the north side. We are 7 feet, currently my house is 7 feet higher than the Shulo's property, on their property, where the gully starts beyond the north boundary of the fence. Any flooding that's going to happen, we are going to improve that issue. because we're gonna capture everything in drainage and send it out to the lake. So the concern that they have, which they told me is their number one concern, is actually going to be better with this development than it would be without it. Because all the water right now, gravity is an amazing thing. It'll just run straight down to their property right now from my house, from my elevated yard. So, sorry, I get too worked up. Anyway, you know, we'll have to look at options, but so I guess we could take a look at it. We could table it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
One thing I'd like to say is that the Brockmeyers have worked with us from the get-go. They have over and over again worked with us. And I am a person who am always concerned about what the public wants, but there are such things as property rights. And I guarantee you that if he sells his property to some developer, they're not going to work with you like he does. You have no riparian rights in Michigan as far as prospect site goes. You don't have a right to your view. The only thing that you can do is setback and height regulations are the only things in Michigan. It's one of the few states where you don't own the view. You could work to change that maybe, but presently you don't own your view. And he's trying to work with, I think, for that. I think if you could get to 9, I could support this.
Yes.
Issue low, north of this. Haven't talked about the value of our properties. So up, down, sideways. Is there anything that you can tell me about the value of our homes and our properties?
Speaking to the mic for the people online. I did some research on Zillow. You know, it's not 100% accurate. And of course, this was almost a year ago now. They're just taking houses that are directly adjacent to condo developments on Spring Lake. So single family homes directly next to. In the last 24 months, this is as of September, there have been 22 Ferrisburg Spring Lake waterfront home sales from 475 to 2.175. That's changed, obviously, since then. The median home price in Ferrisburg may be $350,000, I think, as Dina had pointed out. But the median Spring Lake waterfront home price is $745. For waterfront access condos, average price is $615. This price kind of supports, I think, Nicole's concern about the sales prices of these condos that they would need to be. Buyers who want waterfront property but don't want to pay for Lake Michigan or the main body of Spring Lake would have an alternative with this proposal that they do not have now. There is a house on Spring Lake right now, right down from the Doties. That's about a $2.2 million house. They bought the lot for $800 grand. The building permit was $1.4 million. It's right near your neighborhood. That's a great house, beautiful house. There's a house over off of Lavinia, same price range. People are buying lots, tearing down houses, and building $2 million houses. That's what's happening because they can't afford Lake Michigan, but they want to be on the lake. So, or Spring Lake. I mean, it may be a reason why the Doties, decided to buy in the Bayou, because a house in the, of that caliber on the main body of Spring Lake might have been $2.5 million. So, as it relates to you, Julie, in your question, just some quick research. Home values directly next to condos. Located at 1649 Lakeview on 0.67 acres, immediately west of the Gables. That house sold in 2012 for $995,000. Today, as of this writing in September, the Zillow estimate was 1.67. So almost $700,000 more in value. This is before the most recent remodel they're doing over there. 417 Buena Vista Drive on a 0.6 acre lot is located immediately west of east of Cote Lamere condos in the village of Spring Lake. It sold in 2009 for $1.1 million and now has a Zillow estimate of 1.75, another $600,000 increase. 15880 Prospect Point on 0.72 acres is the first home west of Prospect Point condos in Spring Lake. It sold for 1.1 in 2019. Now, 4 years later, the Zillow estimate is 1.65, another $550,000 increase. This is not comprehensive, but at least I think, generally speaking, new housing is a betterment to existing housing.
Again, when I bought my house, I paid for the property. I know I don't have any rights of the, but that was worth that property because of what it is now. When you take that view away and it's straight, I can't think that this property or my property would increase.
Thank you for giving me just a couple extra minutes. By the way, when you asked where this comes, I thought maybe served as 15 years as the Grand Haven Township Planning Commission, 9 years on the Township Board. Now Grand Haven Township. Also one of the educators for the Michigan Mentioned Administrator Certificate. Zoning is my background, but I keep hearing them say that 9 units isn't going to change the sight line, but that's just demonstratively not true. The unit that creates the biggest problem is this one, because of just simple geometry, is the one that's closest to the Friedenstein's property. If you remove that unit alone, you'll see this is the sight line they're proposing now. If you take out that unit, it comes to here, which is the closest corner of the building in the middle. So this roughly 30%, 30 degrees they're impacting already, you already improve it 10 degrees just by eliminating that one building. And then if you were to move these center buildings back half their length, 25 feet, you pick up another 10 degrees. And so then you're down to only a 9-degree impact. So this idea that you can't improve this with one unit being removed is just incorrect. One unit buys you 10 degrees, and 25 feet moving back these center units picks you up another 10 degrees. You're down to only a 9-degree impact on it.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Could we have him?
Encourage you to get out your rulers, because it's pretty easy to.
Yeah.
Could we have him approach so we can see that?
Yes. Could you come up here so we could?
Yeah, I know it's hard. Drawn so many.
That would be just on the south neighbors. That wouldn't.
But they're impacted off. This sight line. Roughly. And I'm saying move this building in particular. Move it back half its length. 5 feet. You're to this. Halfway.
Okay, you showed the kids now.
Yeah. This line right here. This is now the most, that sight line comes up.
I come prepared.
And the other thing I was saying, if you move, these houses in back
Tractor.
25 feet, actually, I didn't even draw that. but they would be- Now, and what they're proposing, almost turn 2/3 of the way over. You're closer to 10 degrees. So that's not exactly what my clients want, but my point is, makes a very minor adjustment.
I think you should share that with. Yes. Yes. Yes, you may. Come up here, please.
My name's Stan Stirk and I live in Bites. My question, when you do this sightline thing, which window are you picking on the back side of the building, on the west side of the houses? And where are you sitting? Are you sitting 2 feet back from the window, 5 feet back from the window? Or are you sitting with your face on the window when you're doing this angle? Sightline angle. So where do you start your point of looking for a sight?
Sure, that makes a difference. And I didn't do it, so I don't know where
No,
they.
I mean, so,
Yeah.
so like if you're standing right on the front edge with your face on the window, your sight line changes a whole lot when you back up 3 feet. You've got now a window to look for that's constraining your sight.
Yes.
But
It's all on this map that was passed out. You have to have a starting point. As long as you're consistent, then with different houses and in what corner of the building you pick and where you pick, you're okay because you're comparing apples to apples then. But it's all on here. And that's why, when's the last time you saw a 360-degree protractor? I'm just a nerd.
Mr. Reddy, could you share that with Mr. Brockmeyer and his engineer here so they, yeah. So there may be something there. I mean, that's only one unit he's talking about, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I had two quick things. One is they ain't making any more lakeshore property. There's a finite amount that's out there, therefore the price only goes up because people want to, that's where they want to live, close water. Water attracts. The second thing is we still are hung up on this word condo. And what's been proposed here are a number of single-family residences. That's what they are. So if you said we're going to put in this, the property will allow for 9 houses, to just depend on how we lay it out. They could be just 9 single-family residents. We wouldn't have to be condos. So keep that in mind. This property could be split, and you could still end up with several houses on it. So, but condo is not a bad word.
So I think we're at an impasse here, and I heard a suggestion, yes?
That's what we're trying to decide.
That's what we're trying to decide here, yes. Do we want to give Mr. Brockmeyer time to think about this some more? Or do we want to proceed to vote here, or what's our pleasure? What do you want? I heard you before saying you wished we would table it. I don't know if that's what you're wishing or not. So you could look at it a little longer? Okay, well, but 9 was what you said would work. It would. Oh, okay. What's your pleasure up here?
I would like to see a revised proposal at 9.
I would too.
If they're willing to do, I mean,
yeah.
this is costing Mr. Brockmeyer money, and I hate to do that. You don't mind.
Get out of
I like that answer, yes.
Well, at least we're making progress, but we're damned if we do and damned if we don't. If we don't make a decision, people say we passed the buck. If we do make a decision, we're not allowing people to consider all the factors. To me, I would rather let you have time to consider all the factors. I'm a process person, but then you're gonna get, they passed the buck. They aren't making a decision. Well, if you don't make a decision with all the information you have, what's that? That's wrong. So I would say if everyone's amenable to tabling it yet again, doing that.
Take a deep breath.
Not going to please everyone.
I'm sorry, what, Roger?
Said take a deep breath.
When would the next meeting be, though?
Well, I think they would come to us and say, we've done something here and we're ready to get your feedback. So it might be next month, it might be 6 months from now, I don't know.
Is this meeting in place of the May meeting?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I think
Yes.
this is in place of that.
Yeah,
So would,
me too, yeah.
would the next meeting take place the 1st of June, or would,
Yeah, the next scheduled meeting is in June, first Thursday in June. Be June 6th.
There are a couple things at play here, and one is I know the council voted on the repaving of 168th. I'm not sure the timing on that. I think Craig told me it's the spring, and what that does is affect your cut for stubbing in your sewer, in your water, which runs down the main, the big part of the street, and you don't want to have to tear it up twice. I mean, put down new pavement and then come back and tear it up. So I'm just wondering, and this doesn't mean that we'll reach a compromise, but this is another factor I'm thinking ahead about.
Yeah, when we found out, we would work that stub and,
Okay.
and water ends.
Yeah.
And really initiate,
Okay.
but given, if they did project,
I'll work with Craig.
So do I hear a motion to table or what?
I have something first.
Please.
And that is, it sounds like there's 3 things that they need to really look at: the sight lines, right? Number of units, and how about our precedent with waterfront setback and the averaging that we work so hard to maintain? Is that just Lake Michigan, or is that all of our water?
That's all over water
All of
now.
our water in Ferrisburg,
Yes.
correct. Is there anything else that anybody's got, concerns-wise?
density would be addressed if one more unit was eliminated.
Okay.
And that's come up multiple times. I just think the overall, I mean, we're talking about the number of docks, the number of traffic, the number of cars, the number of boats. Like, I think that with the elimination of one more unit, that would help all of those.
And if 2 units were eliminated, and I know they don't want to go there, then it would meet what the land use plan calls for that area.
Well,
Because it would be under
11
3.
to 9 is 2 units already.
No, 2 from where we are now.
Jordan, I'm sorry.
Yes, hi.
But with all due respect, as you know, in our area, the whole street of Carlson is empty from October until even now, because they're all rentals. So there's no way of knowing, we won't have short-term rentals, but there's no way of knowing that people will live there and then go down to Florida or wherever for 6 months out of the year. So this additional traffic and they're not on Carlson. Some are on, you know.
And that's not
this-
necessarily my concern. It's just I've heard it, and yeah,
Yeah, so take that into consideration too.
definitely.
Hillary O'Toole from 16885 Lake Road. My question is kind of was to start with, that if there are 4 or 5 of laws or ordinance project need, that's still in and or change. I think that's the crux. Books and rule or law covers, and I don't know. And to me, everybody, that should be met for that person. Proposal to change that law, that the next person isn't treated fairly or unfairly. They're treated ordinances that are. I think that lost in all of this. Not sure if that's just ending or if it just gets lost. That those are or are not being. So I think that was part of what our question was last meeting.
Mr. Chair.
To state those, and I think that's very important. Any progress forward or new development, help down the time. It's all fine, as long as what the rules are applicable for rules. That's what my concern.
For plan unit developments, the planning commission has some ability to be flexible on some matters.
Does that mean you change the rule or you're just flexible?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Could
It's a
we-
give and take.
Could we hear from David on this?
Yes,
David.
and so similar to what I discussed a couple
Thank you.
weeks ago, as mentioned, the plan unit development process is a collaborative planning process. There's a recognizable benefit to the community. Development can in a way earn flexibility related to certain zoning requirements.
Then change
Um,
it. Then change it
yeah.
so the next person
Well, I'm-
doesn't have to go through all this.
Answer Mr. Carlson's question. So there's really 3 areas that there's some flexibility or different some really kind of discretionary decision-making authority. So the first one is going to be the issue of whether or not it qualifies for a reduced acreage for PUD. So anywhere between 1 and 3. There's 4 standards that need to be met. Mr. Reddick noted those that all need to be met. Our opinion in the past is that there's some level of subjectivity to those 4. There's going to be difference of opinion if all 4 have met or if they haven't. There's going to be arguments either way. So that that's one that you have the decision-making ability to recommend whether or not it even meets the qualification requirement. The zoning requirements itself, there was a comment last time that only setbacks and separation can be considered with the PUD review. Because there's a statement under there's a table concerning setbacks, lot size, and frontage, and there's a statement immediately following that table that says that setbacks and separation can be considered. So there was a statement last time that said, well, I think you can only consider these specific setbacks and separation requirements. I don't agree with that. I feel that all of them, any zoning requirement can be waived through this process. The only reason that particular statement refers to setbacks and separation is because it's immediately following that dimensional table. So there is going to be some debate on whether or not an applicant can request modifications to any zoning requirement versus just setbacks and separation. But there are multiple references in Chapter 8 that give that mention the waiver authority in a general sense rather than restricting it simply to setbacks and separation of that table. And then lastly, just the requirements themselves. As I said, the intent is that there should be some reasonable level of flexibility with zoning requirements. And yes, there are certain ordinance sections of the book that could be relooked at, reassessed. And it's the Planning Commission's based on your input, is, you know, what is a reasonable extent of flexibility that could be granted for something that meets the goals of the community. So, you know, that when we look at this this waterfront setback, the 282 feet is 7 times the base district requirement. So that's a pretty significant increase. There's really only one other location in the city, just west of the Spring Lake Yacht Club, that I think is similar in terms of homes being separated, average of 200-300 feet from the water. So this is kind of a unique scenario, but still, when we wrote this section of the ordinance, the intent was to respect the existing context, the built environment, existing setbacks. So it's again, all of these, there's a level of discretionary review. Some of these standards are fairly subjective, and it's ultimately the Planning Commission's job to determine a reasonable amount of flexibility through a PUD process that meets the goals of the master plan and the intent of the zoning ordinance.
Thank you. So, yes?
By the way, you're very lucky to have Mr. Jurassic Services. He's an excellent player. But I just depart with him on one point, and I'd get an opinion from your attorney on what can be waived in a PUD. And the reason I say that, and we can parse the language here, but what it says expressly is the city council may, after recommendation by the planning commission, reduce the required setbacks in building separation in order to ensure proper and harmonious building relationships, protect or preserve natural features for other purposes conform to the intent of. All it mentions, setbacks and building separation, can't just willy-nilly do it. It has to be based on either ensuring proper and harmonious relationships or preserving natural features. Immediately following that, except as may otherwise be noted in this article, all other site development requirements shall conform to the requirements of. So it is in fact very clear that building separation is the only thing that you have the authority waiver, and all other site development.
Thank you. So, are we ready? Who wants to make a motion here?
Making a motion to table.
So I would make a motion to table this issue until our next planning commission.
Or until they come to us and approach us and say they come back.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we table this until they come back, Mr. Brockmeyer comes back with modification. No discussion on tabling motion, so all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? It's unanimous. So we've tabled the matter. Yes. We can. I'm going to take a 5-minute break here. We'll have a public comment later. Item number 9. I think so. But you can make comment, or anyone else. Yeah, I think so. No, I think it's exhausted at this point. They've said everything they want to say. Yeah, yeah, yeah. How was the daughter's concert?
It was good. It was 7th grade to seniors, so it was all the women's choir. My daughter had a choir concert at the high school. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they had Dr. Derek Fox. He works at Lake Michigan State. But he came in. They were at the school all day. Oh, great. She's in. But yeah, but it was all girls. 7. Like they didn't even have enough.
But, it's, everybody's got good points to a
I know. I
point
was like,
because
well, I don't really need.
they
to be
don't
part of it at the
realize
beginning.
that, not everybody follows the same laws.
It won't be quicker, it'll just be the June 6th.
I wasn't looking forward to it.
No.
Anyway.
Guidance.
Thanks for coming. Oh.
Oh, did you say that?
He's a city councilman and also. Yep. He's been around.
Okay, are we ready to resume? Okay, we're back in session here, folks. Let's move down to agenda item number 8, presentation applicants for appointment to the planning commission. And Regina Burke, you want to talk to us? You can stay right in your seat there and talk to us there. Sure,
Is
may.
that fair? Because everybody else has to go up there.
If you feel better up there, go for it.
It's not right. Just up here. I have served on the planning commission recently and also in past years. I started getting involved in city business under the auspices of Charlie Frudig. I don't know if any of you knew him. I met him at the yacht club and wanted to get involved. So that was probably 1999 or so. I got on the zoning board of appeals. My mentor was Larry Mulvihill. Gonna get sad now because he was just a hero to me. He was a man who was an attorney, and I mean, he would have people take their hats off when they came before the ZBA. He was a man of very, he didn't suffer fools gladly. So you learned a lot from him. So I've enjoyed serving. I have taken several classes, including I just finished the citizen planning class from MSU. So I would appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. And let's, is Connor DeYoung here? Please come up and talk to us.
Appreciate you having me. My name is Connor DeYoung. I've lived in Perrysburg, Harbor Point for 4 years. My wife and I moved here from Grand Haven. 3 little boys. Very fortunate to live. Been involved in a lot of extracurricular activities. We feel that our family's been getting up from this here. Because of that, I felt some sense. Making the decision to apply for the mission, kind of looked at my professional public service. Currently a program manager where decisions with both because of those experiences.
Sure. For example, you work for the state? Is that what you're sharing?
Yeah, so I work for the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Okay.
I work in counties surrounding Ottawa. And in that, I work with home services. So I'm responsible for program funding, licensing, education, several councils, committees related to my job. I also represent county for emergency planning. So I bring that experience to planning. I also bring in a experience of this.
What kind of policy drafting did you do?
So it's related to state of Michigan policies that relate directly to how we are administered. For example, local office customer service.
And could you fill us in a little more about your education? You said you have master's level education. What kind of degrees do you have and so forth?
Yeah, so I attended Western Michigan,
Okay.
where I obtained my bachelor's in political science, social work, and criminal justice. I had to think about it. And then I got my master's directly after that. Work
At?
Western Michigan University. So directly after graduating, working right county public safety office.
Thank you. Colleagues.
After seeing all this tonight, you still want to be on this body?
Run.
It seems like a good idea. It seems like a good idea at the time, and it's still. Respect my autonomy.
They're not all this intense.
I'll ask Virginia the same question.
Well, for a while I thought no, but I also forgot to tell you my credentials, but you can read them. I just want to say thank you for applying. It's great to have new people and a new perspective, and I would welcome you here.
Oh, I appreciate that, and I'm practicing.
Are you around, like year-round? I mean, with your job, you have, I mean, you don't take off 6 months or go somewhere else, then you wouldn't be able to be at our meetings.
That's correct. I live here full time.
Yeah.
Our meetings are the first Thursdays of the month, typically.
Yes.
Not today.
Any other questions for Connor? Okay.
Another Harbor Point guy, that's okay.
We're all right. A member of the
Oh, good.
Every Thursday. The city and all.
Okay. Thank you. We have presentations here. Are we still waiting for other applicants to come in, or what was the deadline?
It was April 26th, Monday, so if you want to make a recommendation to the mayor at this time, you're more than welcome to do that.
Craig, how many seats are we filling?
So we have 2 terms expire in '24, and we still need to fill Rogers someday.
We have 3.
Yeah.
We don't need to.
You put your application in?
We haven't for 2 years.
Let's see here.
So John Rifle's term is up, and so is Regina's. Regina has reapplied. We have not seen anything from John yet.
I was gonna say something in my comments. I didn't see on here, make recommendation to the city. council.
I should have put on there. If you would do that, though, that'd be great. Because we're not gonna meet until June again.
Okay, all right, well, let me give a couple comments. I would look back and I observed that I started serving on this body in 1997. So I'm completing my, what, 9th three-year term, 27 years. It's been an honor and a pleasure to serve the citizens of Ferrisburg on this body. I'm very interested in what this body does. I've tried to be very diligent in my job here. I enjoy doing it. But we had a young man on the board some years ago, and he was younger than the members on the board. And we didn't always agree. We had split votes on things, but he was a good guy. And then he got engaged and married and moved somewhere else. And so he wasn't on the board anymore. But before he left, he looked at us one night when we had a different vote, and he says, "You're all a bunch of old guys here on this board. You need youth on here. You need some vitality." And I thought about that. I said, he's right.
And I think his name was Connor. I think his name was Connor, too.
Yeah, if I did, yes. And, there were times when we struggled to get people to serve on the planning commission. It really has been a delight to have the young folks here who've joined us here. And so, thank you. My wife tells me I need to step down, and I think I do too. In late November, I'll be 80, and I think that's probably time to be off the board here and let the next generation take over. Roger's been trying to get out of here for months.
2 years.
For a couple of years. So I think this is an opportunity to make that happen, and I'll feel very confident in the replacements because I know you guys are doing a great job. You've gotten trained, and you're diligent, you're thoughtful, you ask good questions, you do your homework. That's really important to do a good job here. And so it's been a pleasure to serve as citizens of Ferrisburg, but I think it's time to pass the baton. So that's why I did not reapply. So you know.
You'll be here in June though, right?
I will, yes.
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 That's when we give you the roasting party.
Yeah. Well, I must say, Roger, I know I never made the comments at the meeting when I guess I should have, but when you decided to step down, I didn't provide a claim for the service you gave on this board because you were amazing. You were an incredible chairperson for the board. You were able to interact incredibly well with the citizens here. You were very polite, respectful. You always did your homework. You always thought, and you just did an incredible job as chair of this body. So I think the city of Ferrisburg owes you a thanks, Roger, for what you did here. You were awesome.
You did thank me before, and now I get to thank you.
We didn't set this up, did we?
Well, continuity is very important. And you guys, all three of you, Regina included, because you've been at it for a while too.
But this is your second time on the board.
The power of mentoring is everything. And for us three that are relatively new to this, it's important to see how it all works and how you can communicate to the public and interact with them and what the expectation is in terms of doing your homework and everything else. And you guys have really done a good job setting the pace on that. And I thank you before for your mentorship, and I'll thank you again.
I second that, both of you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I selfishly am glad that Rogers had to stick around because you guys it was a lot for us as new people, and you guys we look up to you guys, and so it was good. Because you were about out the door right after I started, and I was like, oh no, I need to, you know, suck in everything, all the knowledge that you guys have, and so.
I was glad Roger was still here, so.
Historical knowledge is important. The experience that you bring with past work here and in the city is invaluable. I mean, nobody can give you that until you've lived here for a while, so.
Very true.
Definitely be missed.
And I think what John said too, you just don't back away from this. You're still around, you're still available, still be engaged. It's just in a different way, that's all, how we do it. So, yeah, we're like a bad penny, we don't go away, come back again, or a bad habit.
So these are the only applicants who've applied, and there's a clear deadline for applying. Okay, well, what do we want to do, folks? I'm not sure about it. No.
Do I have to recuse myself from voting for myself?
You abstain.
Oh, okay, so can I nominate Mr. DeYoung then? I can do that.
You may, yes.
Then I nominate Mr. DeYoung.
I'll second.
For recommendation to
For,
Planning Commission, the City Council.
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion further? Okay, let's take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, you're gonna be nominated for the job. Honored. And now, Regina?
I'll nominate Regina for Planning Commission, go in front of the council.
Support. It's been moved and seconded. We nominate Regina. Continue on the Planning Commission. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Aye.
We've accepted. You got that right in there at the right moment. Okay, so congratulations, Regina. Yes.
Now, these go to, Mr. Mayor here has the mayor's picks. So then they go to approval of city council, but I want you to think about this. There was John's spot on this commission, my spot, and Regina's spot. And we have 2 applicants that we have recommended. So there's still, one of us is carryover.
And do we have to decide who was the one for which timeline, term limit? We didn't say that, did we? Which?
So it would be for the term expiring 2024 or 2025. There's two terms expiring in 2027, 1 term for be expiring in 2025. And that's the term that Roger's serving right now, the ones expiring in 2025.
Right.
Regina, do you have a preference?
Pardon me?
Do you have a preference?
But Mr. Young has a young family, let him.
Is Mr. Jonas sticking around for another year?
If the mayor wants me, yes.
And give 7.
Give them the 2 longer terms and have 1 more year. Is that okay with you?
You bet. Thank you, Roger.
Okay.
Awesome. I think we've solved it.
Thank you.
I'd like to see the master plan through, and I know John's going to have his name on it because he's been a chairman of this body, and his fingerprints are all over it. So he's part of it also, and I'm sure that he'll want to see it through as well.
Sure. Okay, so here we are. Public comments. We're down to, yes, Mr. Scarpino, yes.
Tim Scarpino, 17761 Bayberry. I remember when I was first elected city council, I'd been a resident like 4 years. So I felt a little odd when you saw an audience like this of people who clearly have been here almost their entire lives. I'm coming up on almost 30 years, so I don't feel like that anymore as a resident of the city of Ferrisburgh. First things first, so there is still a position on the planning commission available for an applicant to apply for. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay, excellent. 2, I didn't appreciate the straw man argument from the attorney who showed up here which was basically arguing against something nobody said here at our previous meeting with regards to Bites Landing and the Gables. I just want to make sure the public record is clear on that. 3, you two have been rocks. For those of us who, while we have served in the city in the past, been involved in the city, but are still civically minded, you two have been rocks that have really made us a better community and made the citizens feel better that there were steady hands on the wheel of planning. So I'm not going to repeat all that's been said, but I've learned a lot from you, not only from your responsibilities on the Planning Commission, but just your demeanor as public servants and a group of people like this. So thank you very much for everything that you guys have done. You've been an inspiration to me. As far as the Brockmeyers development, I think it might warrant some conversation at your level to talk about what might be something that could be done to help people understand when they first bring a project forward, the likelihood that if they invest in it time, energy, and most importantly money, that it's going to get, I want to say a fair hearing, it got a fair hearing, but an idea of whether or not it's really realistic. You know, I don't care if Boss Homes comes into this town and you want to put them through the ringer like that, and come out the wrong way. If you want to, you know, take a professional developer and really grill them in terms of what they want to do in the community, as opposed to the Brockmeyers, who have lived here for 25 years and, you know, have, you know, Jordan, what you've said, a really unique opportunity to do something kind of interesting. That somehow, some way, there can be some gut check early on in the process that it's worth their time, energy, and effort. I feel bad, and as I said, we're friends with the Brockmeyers. Dave and Paige are great people. Dave clearly intelligent, has a plan, you know, has the wherewithal to execute on that plan. We just need to maybe kind of figure out what's the best way to help people, you know, especially as we talk about economic development, understand what's doable and what's not doable. You know, it's, you know, he approached his neighbors, they didn't want to hear anything about it, and the next thing you know that those folks show up here the last 2 meetings, and you know, I would be intimidated if I was sitting in your chair there as well. So anyway, just something to think about in terms of moving forward, just being able to have that gut check a little bit earlier in the process to help people understand what it is you guys think they can and should do. And thank you for explaining the PUD, because nothing drove me crazier than, yes, follow the rules, but the PUD allows you to mold the rules a little bit on the fly, as it should. Thank you.
Thank you for those kind comments. When you said we were rocks, I thought you were going to say we were sinking
Not dumber than.
Could I respond to one of the comments about the PUD process?
Yes.
I agree that our PUD process is not one that I would recommend. I don't like Chapter 8. It's confusing, and the process itself, in my mind, is backwards. An ideal PUD process runs through the Planning Commission and Township Board or City Council with a concept plan only, so that there's not a full investment into engineering and architecture as in what you receive in your packet. So, and the idea there is that it would do exactly what was stated, that you would be able to have an overall concept of the development, and you would understand the general impact without having the full engineering details. And then those details would be worked out during a final site plan review after the City Council approved the PUD. So a lot of communities allow for special land uses or PUD projects to be processed through a concept level plan review prior to putting in that detailed, expensive engineering work. When David and Bruce reached out before preparing their plans for submittal, they said, are we submitting this as if this was a final site plan? And I said, unfortunately, yes. You have to provide everything as if you were going to build this and we're sure that it was going to be built. And so that's a lot of risk to be taken on by a developer to go through that process without knowing if it's going to be approved at the legislative level. And now just to go back to last summer, I think the Planning Commission was very clear that the sight lines and setbacks were going to be the issue. And it's difficult for any group that I've ever worked with to give the guidance at that point when you just see the concept at the first time to say, we need less units, we need this. You didn't have the benefit of a deep dive into the project at that point last year. You didn't have the benefit of significant public input to give you other things to think about. So it is always challenging to give feedback when someone just gives you hey, here's a concept, what do you think? Is this going to go through? I see a lot of planning commissions look at plans in that situation, and they'll say, a lot of just head nodding and nothing is said. You guys gave a lot more input than I've seen other jurisdictions and other planning commissions provide at that level of last summer. So I think maybe one thing we could do is take a look at that PUD chapter and maybe reorder a concept review first and then later final detail engineering, because it does put them any developer, especially small developers, they really leverage themselves pretty hard to go just through the process, not knowing if something's going to be approved. So, go ahead.
Did they approach Craig with a meeting with you, the three of you sitting down, saying what would fly and what might fly and what might not fly? Because they got pretty far along.
I think really the main review was last summer. I know I prepared a memo in August, so that must have been the September meeting. And I think we had one meeting, it must have been in July, I think, that we gave it the first look. And we had, I don't think anyone gave hey, this is going to go through or not. It was here are some things you're going to run across in terms of concerns, sightline, setback.
Because I'm not sure, that was thrown at us, and there was a lot. There was a packet. I still have the packet. And there was concept drawings. And nothing as far as a site plan, but just showing that there were 11 units on here, and here's what they might look like. And that's when I said it looks like Iceland, because they were discolored things, and the way it was laid out. Anyway, but I wonder at what point do you really get to think about it, and how much input do we have? And at that point, with hardly any information, because we'd like to reply if we knew more, but they have to invest some time and money at it. But concept is one thing, and that's hard to get your hands around sometimes, concept.
I don't think we have the benefit of knowing how you do this with other communities. And so if the process is quite different there, you should educate us on that, and maybe we need to revise that chapter.
I think it's difficult because, in some communities, I think at the staff level, a project that type of insight can be given to a developer at before submittal is even brought to the Planning Commission. Someone, a planner could say, this is just not going to fly. But I think in this case, there's some pros and some cons to it. And I think it is a pretty subjective review. And I think it wasn't something that I saw as this is never going to fly. Here are some major concerns I think you're going to run against, but I felt like I wasn't in the position to say, don't submit it like this. Whereas I think some communities that can happen. But that still, someone could submit anything to the Planning Commission. But we just, I didn't really feel like that we were in the position early on before it was brought to you to say, don't bring this to the Planning Commission. This is never going to fly. We did nothing to discourage it in a way. We just brought up the concerns. So. Again, because with a planned unit development, there's going to, there's, like I said last time, there could be 75 different opinions on what is a benefit to the community, or if this particular standard has been met. So it's difficult to give that type of advice on a PUD as opposed to a rezoning. I could say it's not future land use plan. Don't even bother submitting for a rezoning because I'm going to recommend denial. I didn't even provide a recommendation until 2 weeks ago when I said I would only be supportive of 2 rows. I sent that email to the group and to the planning commission. I felt that 2 rows was going to be the best way to balance, and then even provide an option for potential expansion if things change in the area. But the PUD is a little bit different of an animal, though.
'Cause I do know that ideas get killed at Craig's level. Somebody can bring something in and they'll say, you're way off base. And based upon, what the current zoning ordinances are and whatever, but that does happen. And that's kind of a first blush where you get an idea, so it doesn't get this far, because he's got a lot invested. I've never seen this extensive of a proposal that was made and remade. And the huge file that I have, I took the file to Florida because there was so much. I just want to keep up with it. But I hate to tell somebody to go back to the drawing board, but we did. I agreed with it.
Especially when there's that level of detailed engineering that went into it.
I think we killed their child.
Yeah, but I don't think we killed the idea tonight. There is, yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Could we have some samples from David of that chapter 8 of what other communities are doing for PUD? To give us something to run with.
And I think that the question of that came up, I think it is confusing. What do we have restrictions on waiver authority? And it was referenced, their section says required setbacks and building separation, and that may, the opinion of Mr. Reddick was that we may be restricted to those. Now, I'm currently and still working on that list of modifications that was their engineer has an opinion on how to interpret the ordinance as it relates to conventional condo. I have mine because it's not noted, it's not clearly outlined in the ordinance at all. Your ordinance does not anticipate conventional condos, and you have separation between buildings rather than side setbacks, for instance. So there's my way of comparing apples to apples is from my own experience. Mr. Callan has a different way of looking at it, and so, but I do feel like we have narrowed it down to, I believe, 5 modifications that relate to setbacks, and then the one concerning lot width is questionable because there are obviously no lots. So we may be down to 4 or 5 modifications that relate to setbacks, and so in that point we would be able to avoid that debate on whether we have full authority to waive anything versus only setbacks and separation. But again, we should not have that type of confusion in this chapter. I mean, if people have different opinions, people who have worked on these types of ordinances have different opinions on waiver authority. That's a bad thing. We need to have a clear, consistent interpretation of the zoning code. So
it does say only setbacks and side yards, or does it say just that, those two?
It's in one particular section. It says, after recommendation by the Planning Commission, reduce the required setbacks and building separation in order to ensure harmonious and so on. And then it's
but not restricted to.
Yeah, it kind of focuses on that. But then there are other sections of this ordinance that, for instance, the density bonus provision clears the slate. It really gives you free rein to waive anything. The intent statement gives the general idea that you can waive all requirements. The submittal requirement gives the idea that you can request more than just setbacks and separation. So I think it could be debated either way, but hopefully we don't have to have that conversation if ultimately we're just focusing on setbacks, because then it would be in line with one interpretation of your waiver authority.
And my take on this is we're looking at changing a neighborhood from something that people were used to. They built their houses close to the road and not the water to begin with, which is unusual for that whole cottage area. And so it's different. And this is a big a big change, in my opinion, all at once. And maybe that's why I say maybe a little bit too much too fast. But the neighborhood is going to change, and as they all do, the waterfront property is at premium, period. And it's going to stay that way.
So, are we at zoning administrator's report?
No report?
Chairman's report. I've already given my report or my comment. Members' reports, comments.
Real quick, I'm getting a tour of Ottawa Sands tomorrow by Jason Chamlin, Parks. I'll be able to see the yurts and the tree houses.
Great.
At the June meeting, I'll fill you in.
Let us know, are they all finished? Or close?
They'll be taking reservations this, they hope to open up reservations this summer. I'm not sure if that's for fall or next year. So I'll let you know watch this space.
Thank you.
Well, I'd just like to say, I hope that we remember and council remembers that this current project is not a political issue. It's being made into that. And we can't let that happen. As Tim Scarpino said, you don't vote on something, you don't deny or approve it because you're afraid of an election or a vote. This is not a political issue. It's the future of Ferrysburg, so.
Other
No
comments?
report.
No report, no comment? All right. I declare this meeting adjourned. When I'm off of here, July, they'll have to send someone else to the ZBA. So. I'm sorry, what? You'll do fine.